Hi everyone, my name is Sandeepa and I'm a rising senior at LCS. Over the summer, I had an incredible opportunity to start an organization named Youth Impact Change, and I had an incredible team to work with me. Basically, what we do is we gather contributors and advocates for the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we have them produce articles that connect to our monthly theme as well as the UN SDGs. Over the course of this month, we were able to launch our monthly theme, which is human rights, and we were extremely excited about this as we had articles focusing on several different issues from hashtag BLM to racism to police brutality and many, many more. This month, we're so excited to introduce a collaboration with another student-initiated magazine named Afrika Moja magazine, and they focus on African excellence around international schools in Africa. The name of this collaboration is The Panel, where we gather several students from around the world to talk about pressing issues and current events that pertain to our monthly theme. As this month's theme was human rights, we had our panelists talk about several different topics, such as BLM, racism, police brutality, and many, many more. And I'm so excited once again to introduce this project to you, and we really hope that you enjoy.
Okay, hi everyone. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for being here, especially during this time and in the summer. We're all very happy that you guys made it all at the same time. And now I'm gonna let Sandeepa do the introductions and talk about our club and why she was inspired to start it.
Okay, so hi guys, my name is Sandeepa. I'm the founder and co-president of Youth Impact Change. And for me, I was very inspired by an online course that I took my sophomore year. So it was basically based on climate change and global inequality. And I really learned a lot about the SDGs, and I wanted to do something. I guess I wanted to provide a platform for students like us to share our ideas and the work that we do to make the environment a better place and society a better place. So yeah, I'll hand it over to Mahek to introduce herself.
Hi guys, my name is Mahek and I'm currently the co-president of Youth Impact Change organization. So actually Ashika reached out to me to help join this, like really inspired by seeing so many students who are so invested in like trying to make a difference, especially with all that's been going on currently. It was really amazing to see everyone with so much passion. And so yeah, that's why I joined. I was really inspired by everybody around me.
Okay. Hi everybody, I'm Kabir. I'm a rising junior at the American International School of Lagos. I am the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Afrika Moja magazine. Um, my partner isn't here today. His name is Rudra, but unfortunately he couldn't make this meeting. But together we started this magazine in the hopes of connecting all the international schools found on our continent. I myself have been to three international schools in Africa, and there is just so much excellence, so much power, and some really great students all across the continent. And so our aim was to just bring people together and so they can share ideas, communicate, and really express themselves on not just less serious matters, but on more controversial topics as well, to just have a platform for them to express themselves. So yeah, that's.
So next we'll move on to have the panelists introduce themselves. We'll start with Daniela.
So my name is Daniela. I go to Lincoln Community School in Ghana, and I'm a rising senior.
And my name is Nana Okuku, and I'm also I'll be going to 12th grade, and or I'm a 12th grade student of Lincoln Community School. So yeah, thanks.
My name is Anes Mugodi. Also go to Lincoln Community School, and I'll be going to 10th grade.
My name is Deborah Odie. I am a rising senior for Columbia High School in USA.
Hello, my name is Kyla Dunkwa. I am a current 12th senior, and I go to Lincoln Community School.
Hi, my name is Orion. I go to AIS, and I'm going to 10th grade.
I just wanted to ask Deborah because I know you haven't written your article for Youth Impact yet, but like you were posting on your Instagram, like all those things about people at your school and what you guys had to deal with as like a Black student. So if you don't mind, could you like talk about it a little bit more?
Yeah, so previously I went to a private school in New Jersey. It's more in the part of New Jersey that's like closer to New York City. So obviously a lot of times you would think it's pretty liberal on that side of things, but it actually, a lot of schools in New Jersey, if they're private, they're usually 80% white. And I went on an academic scholarship because usually the amount of money you pay is the amount of money to go to a private college in America. And there were multiple occurrences where in a lot of schools that are predominantly white institutions, you'll see that Black students don't always have a voice in their classrooms. And when situations play out where a student has multiple microaggressions they have to deal with on a daily, or a teacher has an assumption about a student or their capabilities, the Black student or a student of a person of color doesn't really have much of a say when they're in a room filled with other kids that don't look like them and don't understand why that thing is offensive, why that thing shouldn't be said, or why that student deserves better. And even after leaving the school, I had multiple friends who constantly had to deal with that situation. And I knew it to be true because I had experienced it. And that's why I ended up going to an international school in Nigeria to make sure that I was in an environment that was diverse. But coming back to America and seeing that happening, I had to do something. I took action and I started contacting the school, emailing the school, talking to news reporters, talked to TMZ, New York Times, the local newspapers, articles about occurrences where students in the school were blatantly racist and homophobic and sexist, and that were never addressed because you have these kids with so much power and money that the school never really takes action against them. And finally, I helped make an administration of people of administration of alumni who were people of color. So when occurrences like this happen, they can address it. A page for Black students, for Asian students, for Latino students, and for the LGBT community, so that their voices can be heard, they can tell their stories, they don't have to be silenced by the school or the administration. And I made the school rewrite a statement to the public because I felt like the first statement they gave about the multiple occurrences wasn't enough. They had to do more for their population that is so small already, that it's already leaving and pleading because they don't address things like this. So it mattered a lot to me, especially coming from an international school back here to the United States, that I take some of the ideas of making sure in a diverse community or even in a non-diverse community that each voice is heard and feels comfortable in their space.
Next, we're going to move on to the questions from Youth Impact Change, and then afterwards we'll go on to questions from Afrika Moja. So yeah, Mahek, you can get us started.
Okay, so the question I wanted to ask you guys is, throughout the past few months, we've seen a series of protests and riots, not just in the US, but all over the world. Do you think that this has helped making a change in policy and state law, or do you think that there could be a better way of addressing the issue?
Yeah, so one thing, like in answering your question, yes, they do make a change. Like Luther sitting in yard. Oh, okay. Martin Luther King wasn't just like chilling in his backyard waiting for things to like go. No, people forget that the citizens' power is huge, ginormous, because citizens have to be compliant in order for a government to have power. If the citizens aren't compliant, then the government implements like their police or military power, right? But then again, if your citizens are not in alignment with your government's ideals, then you're going to have conflict, which is what's happening right now. The police are constantly trying to further the efforts of the president, but the citizens aren't in conclusion with that. And in order to appease or to have power over a group of people, you need to appease the citizens that are in it. So in order for these protests to stop, the president is going to have to make changes, have to make laws, have to make any sort of ideals in order to appease them, which is why protests are important. They're not just to protest or to riot, which aren't even most of the people who are protesting, but what the media is showing are those riots. But in order for us to keep protesting, or the reason why we're protesting is so that the government can appease the needs of the people, which is why it's so important that we protest. And not only in the US, if we're protesting in the UK, in Africa, in Asia, it's showing that this movement surpasses just the people in the US. This is something that everyone should be looking at in general and see that this is an ideal that we should be heading towards. So if the US doesn't respond, then the government of the UK should respond. And they should find ways in order to show the world that this is also something that we should be achieving, not just the US. Because there's racism everywhere. It's not just in the US. There's racism in Africa, in the UK. There's racism everywhere. So if other countries are also responding to that, if they're also protesting or making laws, then it shows that we can achieve this ideal for people who are fighting this fight in other places.
Yeah, and so basically, in addition to what you said, looking at like the Black Lives Matter movement, it's not a recent movement, right? It was founded in 2013, and way before that, people have been demanding change. People have been advocating for change, and it seems that only now, through a series of worldwide protests, that change has actually been galvanized. And I think that the fact that the whole world is in on it, the fact that the whole world is participating, is putting more pressure and more eyes on policymakers, more specifically in America as well.
Okay. Also, America prides itself on being the land of freedom, a democracy specifically. And if they want to uphold that, the whole purpose of a democracy is for most of the power to be in the citizens' hands. Obviously, we have things like the Senate and stuff. Things like the Senate even, they're also supposed to be a representation of the people. Everyone in power is meant to be a representation of the people. So when they're not being represented well, they're not being treated well by the people who are basically supposed to be like, yeah, we're here for you, we're here to take care of you. Protests are something that needs to happen, because even with things like, you know, the riots that they usually show in the news, it still leads people to go search for why are people rioting. And once they start, you know, typing that in, they fall down this rabbit hole and they start realizing, you know, the experience of being not just Black American, but Black in general. Because when you walk into not even just majority white spaces, just majority other spaces as well, you're not seen as, oh, you're Black from America, you're Black from Africa. No, you're just Black to them. So they're going to treat you the way they want to treat Black people.
Right.
So I think these protests are very, very helpful as well, just to spread the word across the world, to show, I guess, the pain. These protests, to see how many people are there, you can really see how many people have been in pain for hundreds and hundreds of years. So I think whenever something like this happens, it's always necessary.
I definitely agree. I think that protests and riots are kind of a situation where for so long we haven't been heard. Like, we've seen these protests and riots before when it came to Trayvon Martin. They just weren't received as well by America or by the world in general. But I think it's definitely important that we're doing it now because we have things that are coming up out of it. Like, there are many people who are starting to see that Black-owned brands should get more representation, that in the modeling industry, there should be more people of color, or in schools like my school, that there should be more policies set in for people of color. And we have conversations like these ones because it's getting more attention than it ever has before, and because people all around the world are thinking about how are we impacting our people of color, how are we impacting our LGBTQ community, how are we impacting our gender roles in our communities. I think these conversations are coming up now, especially during a pandemic, where people have taken more time to see the world around them and realize certain things are not equal, and that without talking about them, that doesn't do them justice. So the hope is that, as you said, we don't have to protest or riot in the future. The hope is that in the future, these laws and policies will be implemented into our governments so that we can go through a lawful way of, protesting what is like, we can go through a lawful way of addressing another murder or just another time that a person of color, a woman, an LGBTQ member is confronted with oppression. So that is the hope.
Yeah, so we all heard how Deborah made a change in her community by encouraging policy action and how she saw a change in her school. So our question is, how did you guys take action from your end to advocate for current issues such as the Black Lives Matter movement, and racism and police brutality? And from your actions, did you notice a change amongst your friends, family, or school, whether that was an immediate change or a gradual change?
So I think in my community, well, back in South Africa, one thing that we worked on, one thing that I did, especially just in the community, just calling out things which contribute towards the patriarchy, contribute towards the system, which basically puts men or women, and would contribute towards a system which basically doesn't enable women to be free, which doesn't enable women to be able to express themselves in society. So one thing that I personally worked on in terms of that was just amongst my friends, just talking about these things, just having conversations. And when someone says something which goes against the whole thing which you're working towards, just calling it out, just saying that what you're saying is contradicting the movement that we're working towards, because the statistics which we're seeing in South Africa are something that needs to be addressed in the youth. It needs to be addressed, and we need to move forward with the right mentality. So it does boil down to the small things, because it's the small things which basically escalate to a new level. So if we don't address these things amongst the youth, if we don't tell young men, young boys that these things that you're doing right now contribute towards a whole bigger impact, like has a bigger impact on like the whole thing that we're doing now, then that's where the problem will basically perpetuate. So in terms of that, it has had both positive and negative effects. Negative in terms of the fact that there's a lot of tension, a lot of many people who don't understand this whole thing and don't understand why they're being called out and why we're addressing these issues, and many people who are conservative for whatever reason as well. So we do have certain tensions, have certain problems with that. But overall, in general, I think in the community there has been a massive change. There has been a massive step forward. We are seeing a lot more people coming forward and being able to speak out and being able to support movement. And that's exactly what we need. We need a space where our young girls, young women, just women in general, you know, all the women in our lives feel much more secure than what they do now. So yeah.
All tea, all tea. But to add on to this experience, you're so right about like calling people out. No shade, but in many schools, I've experienced people who are not Black saying the N word. It's not up for discussion. We all know it's like, you know, like it's something that shouldn't be said, or something that we shouldn't need to say, you shouldn't do. So calling people out really does help, because all the Black people in my school, we gathered and we decided to tell these people when they do say the N word to stop saying the N word because they are not Black. And that type of simple things, just calling people out at our age, really does work. And if we take like stuff like even cancel culture too, when we attack the people that will attack, Jesus Christ, when we tell the people of our like our idols, our celebrities, to come back from the stuff that they said and grow as a person and apologize properly for the things that they do, we can grow as a society. And it really does make a difference when we start getting, you know, our celebrities like Nicki or our celebrities to come out and apologize for the things that they've done to our society, because it gives the youth, like people younger than us, the 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds, to really understand what is proper in our society. So yes, agreement.
Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more. But the thing about just not even just the N-word, but microaggressions, it really sucks calling people out, especially friends, because we all I'm just gonna say it now. Each and every one of us in our school has people who have used derogatory terms that they're not supposed to. Like for me, in both schools, you know, you tell them to stop and they won't because they don't understand. And it kind of sucks because with your friends, you kind of hold them to a certain standard. And when they break that standard, it's extremely disappointing. But for us to make any change, we kind of have to be disappointed with these people, because they'll see, oh snap, like I did something wrong, and they'll take steps to educate themselves. And for me, I also lived in South Africa, right? And my sister and I, there's this account called Open Essay Schools. And that account basically just a lot of Black students, and we call them colored in South Africa, but they're, yeah, colored students in South Africa. They submit stories about, you know, microaggressions, racism. And my sister and I, we were sitting there and reading all of these. And some of them, you know, we experienced, and some of them we didn't even realize were microaggressions and racism at the time. We'll sit there, we're like, oh my goodness, like that happened to me too. And we won't even realize it's bad, because unfortunately we're so used to it. We're so used to being in these spaces where we're kind of put up against, everyone is kind of us against everyone. And you know, it just kind of it just sucks sometimes. And for how far I've taken action, the first couple of like weeks and days, I flooded with my social media with everything I can, because a lot of people, like young people, put something on your story. They're like, oh, nobody's gonna see it, so why am I gonna post it in the first place? Through those things, and they do read them, and especially multiple people are posting at the same time. Eventually they're gonna be like, okay, maybe I should read this, and then they read it and they repost it, so it reaches like a huge audience. And 2 years ago exactly, I started this project called Melanin Month. So during Black History, I'll just write a bunch of articles and things about Black culture and little things like that. Even if not everyone reads them, because they can be long sometimes, I've had messages from people, like when we call someone out for blackface. We've seen in the YouTube community, so many people are getting called out for blackface right now. And I had people messaging me like, whoa, I didn't even understand why blackface was such a bad thing. Or with the N-word, I didn't even know where it came from and things like that. So just any type of thing you do, you don't realize how big it is at the time when you're doing it. But once it's done and once it gets in people's head, it sticks. My parents always say when you're given an education, nobody can take that away from you. So once you've learned something, nobody's just gonna take it out of your mind. Yes, you can forget, but if it's something like this, you're most likely not to, because it's all around you. So I think just anything little is very important. And yeah.
Okay, so for me, with regards to what change I've tried to bring about, so firstly, I tried to educate myself a bit more. So that's with like watching more informative videos, even something as small as following more people who consistently post about Black Lives Matter on social media, so that I'm learning from various platforms. And I also used my social media to put on information, just as other people have already said. Just trying to like keep the conversation going, because to me it's important that it's not just seen as some trend, but rather as a significant call for change. And like, in addition to what Kyla said about calling people out, calling celebrities, I think that has a big impact, because you have so many people looking up to them and seeing when they're silent, in their minds they're thinking, oh, okay, this person is silent, so it's okay for me to just let these things fly as well. So it's important for us to call out as well.
Yeah, and regards to like social media, I mean, I have to be really honest with you. I have changed. I have really, really changed these past like few months, and I think my story. I want to use my story to advocate more for Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. Just like reposting. I just keep reposting stuff, and I mean, like since I started getting like more interested in stuff like this, I noticed my family members are also kind of really interested, and my friends. I have a lot of friends in Ghana here, like who attend like regular Ghanaian schools, and the image they have of like, let me say, Black America is all they see is basketball, chill. They see rap music, they see chill. They see American football, they see chill, and they don't see like the struggle. So I just like maybe for like twice a week or something. I don't know. I'm trying to increase it. So I use my WhatsApp status and I just post stuff about Black Lives Matter, so that even my Ghanaian friends who don't really believe that there's racism, yeah, I just want them to know, and I know like they can become more educated about it, and then yeah, it could actually become something big and grand in the future. Yeah.
I just want to say that, like, I completely agree. Like, reposting on your stories is extremely helpful. Like, seeing what other people are posting, I read them, and every day I'm learning more. Every single day I'm learning more. Every hour, even sometimes, and it's really really beneficial. You don't understand the impact you can make via social media. However, just simply by post, I think I'm pretty sure all of us participated in Blackout Tuesday, all of that. But just by doing those kind of things, it doesn't make you somebody who is anti-racist, and that term is really key. You can't just be you can't just keep posting these. You have to consciously make an effort to be anti-racist, and that is really important. And I as I was posting more things on my story, like some people, like relatives and stuff, they were telling I want to go to the US for university, and they were telling me that nowadays universities even like look through your social media and like that kind of thing to get a sense of your like application, the applicant. And they're like, oh, if you post stuff like this, it might hurt your chances. If you're saying, oh, like America needs to do this, America needs to do that, this is really bad, like police brutality, this and that, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, this is not somebody we want. So you have to be careful. But like, and that's where the whole problem lies. Like, if there is systematic racism in place for people to stay oppressed, and even though I'm not Black or in America, you can still understand. And even like, there is systematic racism in place which needs systematic reform to battle it. So unless all of us consciously make an effort to keep posting, keep educating ourselves and the people around us. Like at dinner, I talk to my parents, like, though like they completely understand and they're very open about these things, sometimes they don't understand the full extent of the oppression. And we have discussions, and they ask me questions, and if I don't have the answer, I look it up more, I research more, and give them a better response, you know. So even small things like this can go a long way. But it's really important that you remember the purpose of, like, the core purpose, which is to battle such discrimination and oppression, instead of just like blindly posting anything, you know, just whatever somebody else posted, let me just repost it. It doesn't help if you're not actually taking that information in and doing something better with it for yourself or for the people around you. So yeah.
Our final question from Youth Impact Change is concerning the response to the ongoing current issues. Were the responses from specific institutions what you had expected? If so, why? And if not, why not?
Okay. My answer is yes, and that's not a good answer. The yes is not a positive yes. A lot of institutions, they gave these statements, and since I've been on social media, which is like pretty long for, I guess, all of us, we've seen these statements almost every single or every 2 years come up. So with a lot of, I guess, like, for example, fashion institutions always promising diversity, and then we see another model walk down in a Native American headdress or with cornrows again, and we're like, you did it again. You told us the last time that you were going to fix it, you were going to educate yourselves, but you did it again. Maybe the team who was a part of that did educate themselves, but the new team that came in just went ahead with it. They didn't even think about the consequences that could come with it. So I think companies, for me, statements don't mean too much unless it's from, for example, like certain industries, people aren't really allowed to speak out. So when someone from that industry like makes a statement or donates, I'm like, okay, so they actually do care, but they can't do a lot in front. But with industries that impact all of us and that are they're able to be very vocal, I'm expecting way more than just a statement. And I'm expecting you to follow what you say in those statements. Because if you promise for more diversity, more equal pay, to reduce the misogyny and the racism in your environments, I'm going to watch you. And by the next time, if you have to make a statement again, we're going to look back and say, but hey, you know, look at this. You said this in here, but you didn't follow any of it. So, you know, words have power. And unfortunately, people keep forgetting that because we keep being given empty words. So for all these companies, I just don't want their words to be empty anymore. I want to see changes. Young people, especially in this group of people right now, all of us here, all of our passion together, times that by like 1,000,000, and that's all the young people in the world. Young people in the world are extremely restless, so they're going to expect change to come. Like with Twitter, when someone's in a scandal, and you know, they have to apologize for saying something again, they're going to pull up their old statements saying, you got in trouble for this a couple years ago, you said you were going to do this. So we're going to expect you to follow every single thing you say and every single thing you promise.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
That's the evidence.
that's true. That's fact. Many companies have like stated that they're going to change things, but they haven't. Not just companies, but people in general. I think every year we kind of hear the same type of thing, the same type of promise that, you know, we're working towards you know, racial equality, working towards all these things. We're not actually seeing like the change in the institutions. We're not seeing enough Black people in the institutions. We're not seeing enough change. And this is just with so many issues, but specifically now with Black Lives Matter, this is something that we need to see. We need to see this change. We need to start seeing actual things in schools. Many schools which don't allow Black hairstyles, many schools which don't allow some of these things, which kind of perpetuates the whole idea that black hairstyles or black people are like, looked down upon or whatever it is. And I think that's a major issue. That's a major problem, because why is it that a black hairstyle is seen to be ratchet? It seemed to be, so yeah.
The evidence. What? I agree with the both of you because look, I'm just add my 2 cents on this piece. All right. One thing I'm really tired of is some of these companies are giving us nothing, like nothing at all. And I think the response that they've done is literally useless. They might as well just not have said anything. Like, for example, Band-Aid. Band-Aid came out with colored Band-Aids. What are we going to need them for? What are we going to need black colored Band-Aids for? It's not the type of response that we need. Like, or what's that guy? That awful guy who has off-white. What did he donate? $30? It's this type of mentality that I just can't understand. Why we're utilizing this and looking at our people and our idols and not getting the right response from them. Like, he's black himself and he donates $30 with that rich man over there. Like, I agree with the both of you because we expect so much from these companies and we expect them to do things that actually cause change. Are removing their like blackface episodes or whatever. We already saw them. We don't need you to remove them like they didn't exist. We live in the time where internet has copies of copies of copies. You say one thing, the whole world got you. This you is evident. So when we ask for actual change, we need money. We need you to reduce your wage gap, bring more employees that are ethnic of all different types of minorities. If that's not LGBTQ, that's black people, that's Asian people, that's everyone. Not just removing your like old statements and causing it change, or like bringing your extra color band-aids or extra color ballet shoes. Like, it's not going to help anybody. It's not actual change. You feel me? Like no, it's just the type of things that we see in our lives. And another thing we need to stop doing is clapping for these people. We're not clapping for Band-Aid for giving us extra color Band-Aids. No, they're $1 million industry and they're not donating money. What type of clownery? So that type of like mentality is just something I feel like we should push. Yeah, my 2 cents.
Okay, I'm gonna hand it over to Kabir for the Afrika Moja questions.
So my first question is, okay, what does someone do when their ethics and morals collide with what is socially acceptable / economical? This is like a conundrum. Let me explain. So this is a conundrum a lot of us face, even if we don't like realize it. Okay, an example would be, let's say you are the CEO of a big corporation, right? And to keep costs down, to maximize your profits, you pollute, you throw your waste into the river or lake or sea or whatever. And that helps your company, that your shareholders are happy because it's keeping like costs low and your profits high. However, you yourself know that this is not right. It's not sustainable. We cannot afford to pollute anymore because we have one planet to live on, and it's just not right. So what do you do in that situation? Do you, as the CEO, do you like prioritize your company and your shareholders, or do you go for what's right and what's morally correct to you? And like this applies to BLM because, like I said, with the college admissions thing, it's easier for me not to say anything because it will not hurt my chances to get into uni or whatever. But ethically, I know that's not right. I need to speak out because that's my values, you know? And even though it's easier for me to not say anything, I do say something because that's my principles, right? So what do you do? What does one do when these collide? So, yeah.
I would like to say, so in any situation that should like put you in such a such, if you have this kind of dilemma, I would suggest that you just get and move away from this negativity. So relating this to let's say you are the CEO, I would say resign, because you shouldn't be in a position that requires you to contradict your morals. So you should just like move away from that situation. And if you really care about other people and you think about how your actions will have the effect your actions will have in the long run, it would actually be way better than just thinking about immediate pleasure. Because I would like to give an example. So during the slave trade, banks like Standard Chartered in Ghana, they benefited from the slave trade, because like the money that was generated from the slave trade, that was what was used to set up these banks in Ghana. And so some Africans from the diaspora wanted reparations from that bank. And you see, that is like an example of an effect that something like the slave trade had in the long run, and the effects on the bank, the effects on the economy as a whole. So we should always just think about the effect in the long run. It's just like there are some boxes that you need to tick, and ethics, just think about how it will affect the next generation and its effect on your conscience. And if there's that much negativity, just move away, so that you don't end up just being in a bad situation. Yeah.
So with regards to the CEO scenario, finding an ecological solution might produce like an economic loss, but in the long run, just like with this scenario, when the environment around the company is thriving and when the people are benefiting from it, the company itself is able to be sustained and preserved for a longer period of time. So in relation to the Black Lives Matter movement, when we all work towards, even though like advocacy might be seen as something that goes against societal norms, when we all work towards it, and when justice and when equality is attained, and when prejudice like sort of subsides, everyone everyone benefits and communities thrive. And also leaders set a direction, leaders do something new, and new things are not always things that are going to be easy. So I agree with like the statement that leadership is about doing the right thing even when it's easier not to. Yeah.
Yeah, jumping off that idea, kind of like reparations, like we all know Black Americans were supposed to get reparations after they were freed, yet never really did. And it's this idea, even after all these years, there is still talks of reparations, but it's this idea of like, oh, well, that does seem ethically right, like giving them something that they've been meaning to retrieve. Yet it's kind of like, oh, but do we want to give that money into that community? And it's just this idea of even ideas like Britain and their involvement in slave trade, but in the UK it's not talked about as much. And there have been times like when it comes to reparations, like in New Zealand for their indigenous people, they only recently actually gave them reparations and made a statement to that community, an apology. And it's not, and that as a country is hard to do, but it's ethically and morally correct. And in the long run, it makes that community and it makes other communities see that the country is capable of addressing their problems. The country is capable of making sure that they address their mistakes and overcome them. So I really think it's important. And on a personal level, when it came to me making those posts, it was hard because these are kids that I know, and these are kids that I am actively just, part of. And I'm in a call. Yeah, actively just part of. And I feel like in general, these kids contacted me personally and were like, oh, can you not do this? Like, you're making me seem like I'm racist. Or, oh, I'm scared about this, or blah, blah, blah. Or you're making our school look bad. Like, can you stop exposing us or stop going to contact people? And it's just this whole idea of addressing things is the only way we can get better as a community. If you're a CEO and you see that something is wrong, addressing it and using your power to benefit the people around you is the best thing you can do. It's hard and it's not easy. You will have partners who will leave. You will have partners who will come because they agree. You will have money that you lose. But if it really comes down to it, it's about what do you truly believe? Because if you truly believe in something, you can't leave that community to cause wreck and havoc on its own. You will take your power and you will use it to benefit you and that community as a whole.
Just to add on to what Deborah said, addressing things is incredibly important, and it's also very important for people, not just for other people to hold you accountable, but for you to hold yourself accountable, because I feel like accountability especially can go a long way. And if you learn to hold yourself accountable and not be too defensive, you actually are opening yourself up to learn more in the future. But with the scenario like companies, I think that's a great scenario because a lot of them are going through that right now. You know, we have all our SDGs, so that we can kind of reverse the damage we've done, or at least improve the damage we've done. So a lot of people are facing that. And with that, you need to be really transparent and just open up the conversation. As a company, for example, with that situation, you could post it on your social media and be like, listen, I know that what I'm doing is wrong, but these are exactly why I'm doing it, and open up the conversation to people, not just online, but, you know, in your real life as well. Not just your shareholders, because they have a bias to keep those dangerous practices because it's benefiting them, you know, with the money and the profits. But with situations like that, you just really need to open up and listen to what people have to say, because someone might have a great solution, but if you never open up that conversation to other people outside of what you're familiar to, you're never going to hear that solution that could have probably helped your company. And with transparency, I guess just, yeah, same thing. Be open and be willing to listen, because a lot of companies get on the defense or they give really shallow excuses. Like, some excuses can be valid and others are just kind of lazy. Like, you know, you can change it, but you don't want to. So just being open and honest is the biggest thing they can do for themselves right now.
All right. So the second question I have is, so Afrika Moja is an Africa-centric magazine devoted to connecting the international schools on our continent. So the question is, what is our role as international students who have had the privilege of interacting with so many different cultures and diverse people in the BLM movement? Even if we don't stay in the US, why is it important that we voice these issues, even though we don't necessarily experience police brutality and other such things living firsthand here, being in privilege or just not living in that kind of environment? Yeah.
Yeah, I think why it's important is because like our community as international students on the continent is very isolated. And this is something that I realized coming from like just a normal South African community and then into this international community in Ghana. It's very isolated, it's very different. But when you go back into the actual communities that are not international and that don't have certain standards, you'll still have certain issues which are perpetuated, certain biases and certain misunderstandings. So I think our role is to take everything that we have and implement it in our communities outside of this international community, so that where we all come from or anywhere else where, you know, people don't necessarily have all these, you know, all these mentalities around being understanding, etc., etc. Our role is to make sure that they understand that even though they might not experience these things firsthand, they need to be aware, because what they perpetuate in the society could have a greater impact. And I think that that's why like I focused on gender-based violence, etc., because we might not necessarily see or experience those things in our communities because most of us have good morals and things, but outside there, outside of our communities, in the majority spaces, that's where we have a major problem, and that's where we need to address these issues. So I think that's our role, is basically to spread the message, because we have so many different people from so many different countries. That already gives us a big platform to speak out. So it's more about getting the message outside rather in our own communities, because I think in our own communities, we're fortunate enough to have access to a good education and fortunate enough to be taught about the world, etc., etc. But we need to go outside of our spaces and actually educate people there and speak to people there.
I totally agree with Anesu about educating people. I think, see, like as international students, we have such like a huge advantage, you know? Like, I mean, just like in Nesu, I also came from like, I came from like a Christian school as a Black African. So, you know, things did happen. But like the disparity between like, Nesu, I'm sure you can relate, but from like being in like a normal school to an international school is just so huge. And I've always valued the experience of being with people that aren't only like the white crusty people I'm normally with, but like people of all different diversities and types, because we get to experience different cultures every day. We get to talk about issues that are faced in many different countries at different times that aren't only a sole experience from one race or one ethnicity. So as international students, we really must like go and teach people what it's like to be in these different people's types of shoes. So if we hear someone say something that is, you know, maybe uninformed, uneducated, we should spread our knowledge on that particular issue, even if it's not about, you know, being Black, or if it's about being any different type of ethnicity in a different place, because we get to hear those experiences live. And we should be teaching people who aren't in an international school or like in a public school in the US. We should be explaining to them what it's like from our experiences, that we've met people who've always experienced that type of stuff.
Yeah, and also because of that exposure that we were fortunate enough to have, I think that strongly contributes to how open-minded and mindful of other diverse cultures we are. And like, we should speak up about these things, not just pertaining to the Black Lives Matter movement, but a whole range of affairs, because it's highly likely that we know someone who's being impacted or affected by certain issues. And even if we don't, well, personally, I believe that everybody has a moral obligation to speak out, to take action, to do something when you see some unjust situation.
I would also like to say that I'm really new to the whole international student thing, but because I came from a public school in Ghana. But one thing I realized is that international schools stand for togetherness, and like we are just trying to bring everybody together. What I learned is that we know how to appreciate other people's culture, know how to appreciate their language, and we just accept them for who they are, where they come from. We are just really open to new ideas and stuff. Like, we are really open-minded people, and I think um, because of this characteristic that we have, we should extend it and really advocate, because we at the end of the day, we are all still just one people, and it's like it's all coming down to life. What is life, and why should we care for each and every single person's life? Every person's life is important, so automatically we really need to just advocate. We need to stand for our fellow brothers and sisters, and really support them, because everybody needs to be alive, everybody needs to survive here. So yeah.
As international students, we have this advantage and privilege. So privilege to even be in a space where there's so many diverse people, because a lot of people, in other countries will only go to schools where they're surrounded by their own people. So we have that huge, privilege and advantage to be able to, experience cultures. And really with experiencing that, it's not even just like big things you pick up on, it's also small things that, can change an experience that you have with someone. And I think learning about all these cultures as well gives us a lot of empathy. I think empathy is one thing that people rarely bring up in the conversation, but it's one of the things that can help a solution, because there's a huge difference between just saying, I feel sorry for you, and saying, I'm going to help you get through this. What can I do to help you get through this? And also with just being minorities, I guess, in different areas, especially with the whole Black Lives Matter movement, not even like with other movements, for like the Asian Pacific movement and stuff like that. We also, I guess, kind of have this responsibility to sort of show people all our experiences, because for me, going to AIS is going to be a completely different experience for, I don't know, like my friend going to AIS. You know, we all have different perspectives, and I think it's very important to show all of those. And in Nigeria, even though, you know, sometimes we still experience racism here, but we're also a hotspot for other issues like colorism. So opening up the conversation to like international students as well, it can give you a more holistic view of the movements you're involving yourself in. And it can just educate you more about other things that maybe in your area you may not face, but if you were to go somewhere else, or another person in that area can tell you, like, hey, this is an issue for us as well. You know, when you go here, just be mindful of that. So we really have this, I guess, like wide length view of the world that gives us a real advantage to, you know, being empathetic towards other people and teaching other people that empathy.
Sorry, I just also had a response based on what Orion was saying. Basically, you know, going to an international school, it gives you such an appreciation for different culture. And I think that's something that's really key, because like she was saying, you have a different experience. Like for me, I'm in Nigeria, right? But I'm not Black. And you know, color does matter to a certain extent, in that like you can't, you know, there's a lot of people who say that I don't see color, and like it's a really important aspect of who you are. Like it's just part of your culture, and you kind of learn an appreciation for it, like because it's part of what makes you a person. Again, your beliefs, your culture, and it's all like, it's that appreciation that you gain from being around so many people from so many different places and experiencing like a little bit of their form of life. It's what drives you to that empathy. It's what makes you want to say like, not, oh, I feel for you, I want to help you, you're my friend, I want to help you, I want to help you get to whatever it is that you need. And I think that that's really key in like wanting to help with other people's issues, and that's what you gain from like this environment. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just being an expat here in Africa for so long, I've been here like a decade now. The whole like Oyinbo, which is in Nigeria, or Obroni culture, you know, like it already puts you on, just your color puts you on a pedestal, wherever you are here. And it's just, I don't know if it's just that because we're in Africa that they see us as different, you know, like Obroni or whatever. But is it just like just the color like of our skin, just they put us on another like pedestal? So it's interesting, and it needs change, but change takes time. So, but we're the people who can incur that change. So, yeah.
Okay. I realize that everyone has been sitting here for a really long time, so I'm gonna give everyone a 5-minute break, and then we'll be back for a session. Hopefully that lasts 10 to 15 minutes, and we'll be done.